Hey everybody and welcome back to another video. I am Kabir and I am the developer of a game called Overcome. In this video I wanted to share some tips with the game dev community, things that I've learned over my own game dev journey and how I got started with game dev. So here are some things that I've learned while making my first commercial indie game. The first tip that I've learned is to not quit whatever you're doing at this moment and jump into game dev full time without a backup. Back when I had started game development, I was in university, and even before that in school, I used to dabble with different engines and different languages to create really small games like Snake or Pong or games like that. Basically anything that I could finish and anything that I could learn from and get experience from. These small games really helped me set up a base and an understanding for what game development is, and making these small games led me to incrementally gain knowledge about what goes into making games. I do not recommend quitting your job or dropping out of university if you are in university to pursue game development full time solo, because I feel it is too risky, and if you don't have a backup or if you aren't experienced enough, then it could be hard to get back to finishing your degree or getting another job. And there's a high risk of failure in the games industry, especially if you're working solo or going indie, and it needs to be treated with caution, and decisions shouldn't be taken very lightheartedly. My second tip would be to start small. I have said this in my last video also, but I really believe in starting small. You need to finish smaller projects for multiple reasons. You need to gain confidence that you can finish a project. You need to gain experience with multiple smaller games. You need to be able to finish them fast so you can move on to different games, and you need to just gain experience in making games. You can't jump into your first game and decide that it's gonna be a battle royale MMORPG universe simulator. I don't know, that actually sounds cool, but you can't just jump into your first game and expect to be able to make that, especially not on your own. So I would suggest starting by making Pong or starting by making Snake, just copying a small game, not for a commercial purpose but just to learn, and that will give you the experience to be able to scale up later in the future. My third tip would be to understand that game development is a really hard job and it takes a lot of time and effort to get anywhere. It's basically a culmination of every single art form out there. So putting together just say a piece of art is extremely difficult. It's extremely hard to make a piece of art that many people find to be good or to be pleasing. It's extremely hard to make a song or make a music track that many people find to be pleasing to the ear. It's hard to write a story that many people find entertaining. And video games are a culmination of almost every single art form out there. Their art, user interaction, music, sound, all of that mashed up together, and then you put storytelling into the mix, which is complicated enough, and you get this mishmash of an interactive experience that is supposed to make a player feel satisfaction. That's not an easy job. So if you fail, do not get discouraged. Even the best people out there have trouble doing this, And no matter how much experience you get, this will be a hard job, but it will get easier over time. The more you do it, the more experience you'll have dealing with various parts of this endeavor. My fourth tip would be to fail as fast as you can. This ties back into making smaller games. If you make small games and they don't work out, you can simply finish them and you move on to the next game. Maybe this one will be a better one, but you can take the experience that you gained from making your last game and you can use that and you can learn what not to do. I feel like learning what not to do is as important as, or even more important than learning what to do. And failing as fast as possible is one of the most efficient ways to learn a skill and to learn the do's and don'ts of whatever field you're working in. And this is where game jams are really useful. Usually if you participate in a weekend game jam, you have 2 days to create a small game and you can't waste time making a Fortnite clone because you have 2 days. You'll be lucky if you can do a platformer if you're just a beginner. Don't attempt anything huge. Pick a scope, divide it in half, and then attempt a quarter of that. Maybe you'll get that done. And if you get that done, you'll have a lot more confidence. The fifth thing that I would recommend is try not to let the gap between your strengths and your weaknesses get too large. What I mean is, say, if you're good at programming and you're not as good at art or sound design, then you can focus on something that is well within your programming capability, or maybe pushing it just a little bit so you are still growing in that area, but you spend a lot of your time on your art skills and you develop them to the point where they don't need to be on par with your programming skill, but it will be helpful if you can get them close to or near your programming ability, because that will help you have a very even skill set. And this is useful especially if you're working solo, because if you have a really nice game with amazing mechanics and it's procedurally generated, it's a roguelike, whatever, if you manage to make that but it looks really bad, that reduces the value of your game a lot. So unless you're willing to outsource or work in a team, you should not let the gap between your strength and your weakness get too large. Keep your weaknesses close to your strengths. My next recommendation would be to learn from other people's mistakes. You don't need to make every mistake in the book in order to learn something. It's extremely important, and I would say it's more important than knowing what other people have done right, to know what other people have done wrong. If you can avoid making the same mistakes that others have made before you, then you have a higher chance of actually doing the right things that you need to do in order to succeed. So learn from others' mistakes, don't overscope, talk to people more experienced than you. That's a great way to get feedback, a great way to grow. And if you're in game development, your number one priority, I feel, should be to grow as much as you can, because that will help you make games and also make better games. So it's a win-win if you learn from other people. My last tip would be, if your sole purpose of getting into the games industry is to make money, then I would not recommend that, because this is a very risky industry, especially if you're indie, and more so if you're a solo developer, and it's extremely passion driven. People often work in this industry because it's their dream job, and not necessarily because it pays a lot, although it can if you do things right, and also if you're lucky to some extent. But if you're getting into this industry solely for the money, say if you're a programmer and you want to start to make games and you're looking to make a lot of money, it's probably a better idea to work in software, because that is a more reliable industry and you'll earn more money that way. Games is a very risky field and you shouldn't take the plunge into it very lightheartedly. And do your research, figure out your motivations, and then take a step towards it if you think it's the right decision. So these were my few tips about getting started in game development, and if you like this video you can leave a like, and if you like this kind of content then you can subscribe. I'll be uploading more videos along about game development, and if you want me to make any specific videos you can leave a comment down below and I will try to do my best to make that video. Thank you for watching, thank you for giving me your time, and I will catch you in a future video.